Welcome back. I'm Peter St. Onge. This is a weekly roundup of my daily videos on the economy and freedom, where I cut through the BS and lay out what the gaslighting clowns pulled out of their hats this week and what is coming next. An armada of 171 oil tankers are steaming for America. Refugees from the dire Straits of Hormuz looking to score some sweet Texas tea. We're going to need a bigger drill. Maritime intelligence company Windward reports there's currently 171 tankers en route to the U.S. from the Persian Gulf, including at least 28 very large crude carriers, VLCCs, that hold 2 million barrels each. That's 6 times more than normal. Put it together, and 200 million barrels of crude demand, about $20 billion, are about to hit us. For perspective, pre-war, the U.S. exported about 4 million barrels per day, so this is almost 2 months' supply. It's also equivalent to precisely half the strategic petroleum reserve that Biden drained to by the 2022 midterms. President Trump took to Truth Social to gloat about the flotilla. Quote, "Foreign buyers are voting with their ships. American energy means stability, strength, and freedom from Middle East blackmail." They could revive the 5,000 American wells sitting idle waiting for higher prices, so-called drilled but uncompleted, or DCU wells. A 5,000 idle wells is roughly 10 times active wells. All good stuff, but of course it takes time, potentially years, to expand production thanks to environmental regulations. Meaning for now, the Armada is going to hurt, since foreign buyers are precisely what drives up American oil prices. The reason is when you hear how oil prices are global, it's not like the weather or chemtrails. There's a specific mechanism, which is Europeans and Chinese waving billion-dollar checks to buy our precious energy fluids, then sending very large crude carriers to come pick it up. U.S. exports are already up by a third since the war started, from 3.9 million a day to 5.2. Going by the Armada, that is about to skyrocket. And note, there's still another 700 ships stuck in Hormuz plotting their escape to America. So the background here is we don't have oil shortages in America since we drilled, but Europe and Asia are in dire straits with just weeks to months, so long as the strait is blocked, or 90% blocked, depending on the day. Countries are closing universities, mandating work from home and factory shutdowns, big in China. In India, you cannot cremate bodies. You got to buy firewood or break up the chairs. Europe could be out of jet fuel in 6 weeks. There goes tourism, the last thing keeping Europe alive. Pakistan and Bangladesh are preparing for fuel riots, so they all need oil, and America's got the oil. So what's next? Stock markets think the war is over, with the S&P now higher than the eve of the war. Oil markets are more cautious, with European oil futures Brent remaining high through 2027. Possibly because oil doesn't care about the war, it cares about the Straits of Hormuz, which could be strangled long after the bombs stop falling. But the wider picture is we just went through a supply crash comparable to the 1970s oil crisis and didn't get a hint of shortages, even as Europe and Asia are hung out to dry, commandeering the world's tankers at top dollar to sip at our bounty. As one analyst put it, quote, "Iran played its biggest card, and the main result is the U.S. became the world's emergency gas station, and China's cheap energy subsidy evaporated. Trump rewrote the rulebook." New Yorkers are about to enjoy one of the most beloved features of communism, government grocery stores. It's not communism, it's sparkling democratic socialism. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani took a break from chasing New York's tax base to Miami to announce a bevy of government grocery stores that will burn $70 million to build 5 grocery stores over 3 years. That's 4 times the cost and 8 times the delay of a Whole Foods or Trader Joe's if they weren't being chased to Miami. As in, they'd have to sell 4 times what a Whole Foods sells to break even under government management. Of course, $70 million is the cost before the project starts. The first actual store in East Harlem is already pegged at $30 million. You like California high-speed trains? You're going to love New York's low-speed groceries. So the plan is the city buys the land and buildings, covers rent, construction, and overhead, then hires a private operated, guided by New York's finest bureaucrats with price controls and diversity mandates. This sounds familiar. It's been tried dozens of times, even in the U.S., and it's failed dozens of times. In 2018, Kansas City Democrats decided neighborhoods didn't have enough grocery stores. course, this was because taxes, red tape, predatory bureaucrats, and predatory shoplifters drove them out. But their solution was dump $17 million to buy an abandoned grocery store, then another $7 million renovating it. For perspective, a normal grocery in Kansas might cost $3 million all in, not $24. Hilarity ensued. Customers went from $14,000 a day to 3. Shelves were empty. Produce was goopy. Residents complained the entire store smelled like rotting meat, probably because the meat was rotten. The city responded by dumping another $29 million, yet the store was still losing nearly $1 million a year, so they finally pulled the plug. New York journalist actually asked Mamdani about the Kansas City experiment, to which Mamdani replied, "Don't worry, he's going to bring in the best and brightest bureaucrats." True socialism, that will work this time. Alas, it's not that Kansas City was uniquely dumb. Dozens of left-wing cities have tried government grocery stores with the same script: dump millions, lose millions, shut down. The reason is grocery stores are harder than they look. Government is dumber than it looks. Typical grocery store in America makes just 1.6 pennies on the dollar, meaning it's got to be a well-oiled machine to survive. The notion of New York bureaucrats competently running that kind of machine is imaginative. Ironically, New York is not, in fact, a food desert. The city has over 1,000 small groceries, and would have a lot more if New York's best and brightest reduced red tape and taxes, maybe even arrest a shoplifter every now and then. So what's next? The hallmark of true socialism is the load-bearing walls crumble, the food, water, electricity, public safety, while the bureaucrats thrive and breed like flies. Mamdani's doing everything he can to turn the Big Apple into a failed communist paradise. Prediction market Kalshi has even odds the city will lose 80,000 high-income residents in the next 18 months, Detroit on double time. New York's groceries will fail, and when they do, it's worth asking what else the city of New York is screwing up, from city daycare to housing and public transit to public schools. A word from our sponsor. If you own gold, and many of you do, you already understand how it protects your wealth from the insanity coming out of Washington. The inflation, the recessions, the wars. But with monetary metals, there's a way to actually earn a yield of up to 4% on your gold, paid in more ounces of gold. You retain ownership of real, allocated physical gold with no storage costs while your ounces grow every month outside the banking system. If you're serious about protecting your future and building your legacy, head to monetarymetals.com/Peter to get started. One of the best ways to secure your Bitcoin is with a hardware wallet, a physical device that lets you keep your coins offline without internet connection. One of the most trusted names in hardware wallets is CoinKite, maker of the famous block clock. CoinKite devices are made in Canada and they're run by passionate Bitcoiners who've been at this since 2012, back when Bitcoiners were trading in person at swap meets. You can pick up hardware wallets and plenty of other goodies at coinkite.com/ProfSaintAnge. That's CoinKite.com/ProfSaintAnge. Okay, back to our show. The European welfare state is imploding. It turns out extortionate taxes, regulatory straitjackets, replacing coal with pixie farts, and importing the third world do not, in fact, make your country rich. European voters are starting to notice. Last week, the Irish government barely survived a vote of no confidence after nationwide protests that blocked major Irish cities and which 56% of voters supported. The spark was diesel prices, up 20% since the Iran war, but they kept going even after the government paused diesel taxes, which our Congress has not done, because the real anger was rising food prices and downright comical housing costs. Rents in Dublin now consume half of paychecks, roughly double the rate in the U.S., largely driven by mass migration to Ireland, so now Dublin is nearly one-third foreign-born. For a 20-something, it means they're taking home less than 3,000 euros a month and spending almost 2,000 on a studio apartment. A recent house sale in Dublin made international news as hundreds of people lined up for blocks to buy for a completely normal brick house. One recent study found 1.3 million people in Ireland want a house. It's about a quarter of the population, which at current rates of construction is roughly 40 years of construction. By amazing coincidence, 1.3 million also happens to be the foreign-born population of Ireland. Next up is Britain, which last week announced welfare payments now exceed income tax receipts for the first time in history, also driven by soaring migrant payments. In one hilarious clip, the BBC interviewed a black Londoner hoping to get a juicy quote about cruel welfare cuts. Instead, he went off how he works hard and takes home $1,600 a month, but his buddy sits on the couch and makes $1,400 and he's had enough of it. And then Germany, who's supposed to be the adult in the room, the Bundesbank, which is Germany's Federal Reserve, released a new report warning of a, quote, debt spiral, with federal debt jumping nearly $1 trillion in U.S. GDP terms. That's a problem given the German economy is limping along at 0.3% growth, roughly 7 to 10 times slower than the U.S. If debt's jumping by $1 trillion and the economy is not, you are living on borrowed time. So what's driving all this? An empire of tax and red tape that killed Europe's golden goose, taking growth to Japan levels, paired with importing at least 15 million third-world migrants, of whom roughly 80% go on government welfare. A recent Dutch study estimated mass migration costs $500 billion in U.S. GDP terms. That is $10 trillion over the next 20 years in U.S. terms. So what's next? European voters are waking up. A poll last week found Germany's right populist AfD is now the largest party in the country by a significant margin. Britain's right populist parties, Reform and Restore, now outpoll both major parties combined. According to prediction market Kalshi, Reform is by far the most likely to form the next British government at 41% versus 24% for Labour and 13% for the traditional Tory Conservatives. What's interesting about Europe is, unlike America's intentionally sclerotic political system, where Obama judges and the filibuster block anything that bothers the establishment, Europe has parliamentary systems with much more power for whoever wins the election. This means when European voters' patience runs out, the pendulum will swing much harder. According to a new study, liberal men are going extinct, checking out of the gene pool, while conservative men keep on trucking, sustaining the human race against all odds. A new study by the Institute for Family Studies found liberal men have less than 0.5 children each, while conservative men have 2.14. As in every generation, roughly 80% of liberal men check out of the gene pool. Darwin Awards for everyone. Put different, roughly 1 in 8 newborns has a liberal father. In case you wonder about all those progressive TikTokers complaining about their Trumper dad, because roughly nobody has a liberal father. As in, those TikTokers are only alive to complain about their conservative dad because he is conservative. For women, the gap is almost as bad. 1.7 kids for conservative women, 0.8 for liberals. Almost half of liberal women never have kids. Keep in mind, liberals includes migrants who have a lot of kids. Take them out, and liberal women might be under half a kid. Now, liberals never had kids. It's the me ideology, but the gap has exploded since the 1980s. So back then, conservative women actually had fewer than today. They had 1.4, while liberals were basically the same at 1.3. The reason it collapsed, of course, is liberal education and media spent decades trashing the family, championing the girl boss, who parties her body count away till she's way past the wall. A recent NBC News poll found for Gen Z who voted for Kamala, getting married and having kids was almost dead last in their, quote, personal definition of success. Meanwhile, for Gen Z men who voted for Trump, having children is the most important thing in their personal definition of success, according to that poll. Now, a conservative might celebrate this. 7 out of 8 kids raised conservative hearkens good things for the future of the republic. Alas, meet public schools, the ideological wood chipper into which roughly 90% of those conservative kids will be fed. 12 years of state-sponsored indoctrination, followed by 4 years of colleges run by Marxists. Polls find public schools turn students liberal by 4 to 1, meaning 1 in 8 liberal flips to 4 in 5 liberal. University alone tacks on another 10 points, the difference between New Jersey and Georgia. In other words, liberal parents are checking out, but liberal teachers have the kids. The easy solution is give education back to parents, replace public schools with vouchers, and cut off the government grants that turn universities into Marxist zoos. So what's next? The left's near total control of education and media are wiping out conservative thought among kids and literally wiping out liberal kids. Happily, Hollywood's imploding, and we've now got conservative media that celebrates marriage and kids, the meaning kids give to life, the fact marriage almost triples income, men get their act together, the fact that having someone to grow old with is the single healthiest decision you make in life. Meanwhile, we've got growing tools to hand education back to parents in red states, implementing vouchers, and, of course, homeschooling parents, which is what we chose. Still, the kids we've already got are the future voters. We're looking at a lost generation, ideologically and literally, courtesy of government schools and liberal media. A word from our sponsor. Stocks and even gold are all over the place. If you're ready to diversify, Abundant Minds makes Bitcoin mining simple, transparent, and human. You can deduct every penny thanks to Trump's big beautiful bill. It's a 401k for Bitcoin mining. Founded by husband-wife team Bo and Christine Marie Turner after losing $500,000 to broken promises in the mining industry, Abundant Minds was built to protect investors. You own the machines, and they make it turnkey with hosting in their facilities in Oregon. Pricing is clear with one flat monthly fee and no surprises, and they guarantee uptime so you keep earning day in, day out. If you want easy diversification without pressure, learn more at abundantminds.com/Peter to get some of your first Bitcoin mine for free as a gift to my audience. The biggest risk in Bitcoin isn't volatility, it's custody. Because Bitcoin removes the safety net, there is no bank to call, no reset button if something goes wrong. The reality is, most people are not properly set up. They hold Bitcoin but rely on exchanges, incomplete wallet setups, and have no real plan for privacy or inheritance. This is exactly what the Bitcoin way solves. They help you move from exposure to actual ownership, self-custody done right, privacy, inheritance, even running your own node, all set up with you step by step. They never touch your Bitcoin, they're your support team. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Prof. St. Ange to book a free call and go from where you are today to a much stronger setup. Now back to our show. Here come the exit taxes. In case you are stuck in a blue state, dutifully handing over half your money so no Somali leering center goes without, they are now coming for the other half of your money. That oceanfront condo in Florida is starting to look mighty good. At least 10 states are now exploring an exit or wealth tax to squeeze the last drop from fleeing residents. That includes California and New York, of course, along with Michigan, Colorado, Washington State, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and of course Minnesota, who pioneered the Leering Center. In dollars, California's wealth tax is the crown jewel. It would impose a one-time 5% tax on the entire net worth of the roughly 200 billionaires who live in California, where the top 1% already pays half of state income tax. A companion bill would add a 1.5% annual tax. Now, like all wealth taxes, it hits unrealized gains, meaning you would have to sell 5% of the company, given almost all the wealth of California billionaires is in the company they founded, meaning the stock crashes, they potentially lose control, and then they'll have to keep liquidating 1.5% every year until they either do lose control or move to Miami. Now, this takes out the roughly $3 billion in California taxes those 200 people currently pay, as in the wealth tax would reduce revenue. Worse, some will take their companies with them, which employ between 1 and 2 million Californians, pretty much the entire upper middle class. Outside city workers paid $500,000 to ensure fire hydrants have no water. So it could sum to $10 billion of lost revenue. Soaking the rich does not come cheap. The problem is new revenue spawns new parasites who need feeding, so when the billionaires leave, they will turn to millionaires, which is pretty much any Californian who owns a house, at which point it is the Detroit doom loop. Eat the rich till you run out, move on to the kind of rich, the not really rich, and when the smoke clears, you got welfare and people who don't have any other option. Well, and the city workers with the fire hydrants. Happily for California's Leering centers and fake hospices, California Democrats who run the state are trying to push retroactive exit taxes that would continue taxing you after you leave. You can check out any time, but you still owe taxes. This has already kicked off an exodus with an estimated $700 billion of assets fleeing the state, roughly the GDP of Switzerland. It's a warning shot to any livestock dumb enough to hang out at the slaughterhouse. The California blend of wealth tax and exit tax is spreading across blue states, stuck between a massive fraud and welfare class and livestock who know how to move to another state. New York's pushing a 9% exit tax, along with a 4% annual wealth tax, so far only hitting second homes, so-called pied-à-terres. These will spread as income taxes rise. Washington and Michigan just hiked their top rate to nearly 10%. New York City is already at 11% with plans for 17% tax. So what's next? Blue states are walking their tax base off a cliff. If you are in the crosshairs and mobile, it's probably time to talk to an accountant to change residency, sell before the taxes, and structure your business in trusts so they survive for your kids. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and go to petersanons.com for daily videos and in-depth articles with charts and all the gory details. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.